When I picked up the phone to ask my son Max when his wedding would be, my daughter-in-law Lena looked me right in the eye and said with a chilling smile, "Oh, we already got married yesterday. We only invited special people." The words hit me like a bucket of ice water. Special people? I, who for 3 years had paid their monthly rent of $500, bought every piece of furniture in their house, and filled their refrigerator when they had nothing to eat, I was not a special person. I stood there in the living room of my own house, holding the phone as if it weighed 1,000 pounds, watching my son avoid my gaze while Lena made herself comfortable on the sofa I had bought for them. The pale pink dress I had picked out for her wedding hung uselessly in my closet, along with the new shoes and the illusion of being part of the most important day of my only son's life. I had spent $200 on that dress, thinking about how nice I would look in Max's wedding photos in which I would never appear. For weeks, I had planned every detail. I had put money aside to give them $1,000 as a wedding gift. I had called my sister Diana in Chicago to tell her the good news. I had cleaned my house from top to bottom, thinking they might come celebrate with me after the ceremony. All of that collapsed in a second with those four poisoned words, "only special people." Max finally lifted his gaze and said in a rehearsed-sounding voice, "Mom, it was an intimate thing, very small, just the two of us and the witnesses." But I knew it was a lie. I saw the photos on social media. I saw Lena's parents proudly posing next to the bride and groom. I saw her siblings toasting with champagne. I saw Lena's white dress, which I helped finance with the $800 I had given her last month for her personal expenses. I saw everything I wasn't supposed to see. A week later, exactly 7 days after that humiliation, Lena called me with a completely different voice. She was no longer the confident woman who had excluded me from her wedding. Now she sounded desperate, almost pleading. "Reneat, the rent is overdue. The landlord is pressuring us and says if we don't pay this week, he will kick us out. You forgot to make the transfer." Her voice trembled slightly, as if the world were ending. I was silent for a few seconds, remembering all the times I had run to the bank to make that transfer. All the times I had canceled my own plans to make sure they had a roof over their heads. All the times I had eaten beans and rice so I could give them money for their desires. And now, after they had excluded me from the most important moment of their lives, they had the audacity to call me. "Lena," I said with a calm that surprised even me, "didn't I warn you that I only help special people?" The silence on the other end of the line was so deep that I could hear my own heart beating. For the first time in years, it was not I who was trembling, but her. "Reneat, I don't understand," she stammered. "We were always special to you. You're like a second mom to me." Lies. All lies. Wrapped in that sweet voice she only used when she needed something. The same voice she had used to ask me for money for the wedding dress, for the honeymoon, for the rings, which I helped finance without knowing I would never see the ceremony where they were exchanged. For so many years, I had this constant feeling of walking on eggshells, weighing every word, every gesture, every gift, hoping to get a crumb of affection for my own son. I was the perfect mother, the obliging mother-in-law, the silent provider who never protested when they treated me like I was invisible. But that phrase, "only special people," awakened something in me that had been dormant for far too long. I had calculated in my head how much money I had spent on them in those 3 years. Between rent, food, gifts, emergencies, and whims, it was over $20,000. $20,000 I had taken from my retirement, from my savings, from the money my late husband had left, so I could live my last years in peace. And what was all that for? To be treated like a stranger on my own son's wedding day? That night after I hung up, I sat on my bed and cried, but they weren't tears of sadness. They were tears of anger, of accumulated frustration, of years of silently endured humiliation. I cried for all the times they made me feel that my love was a burden, my presence a hindrance, my money the only thing I had to offer. I cried for the foolish mother I had been, for the woman who had lost herself trying to be indispensable to those who considered her dispensable. When I woke up the next morning, something inside me had changed. It was not just the pain of betrayal, it was something deeper, colder. I stood up and looked at myself in the bathroom mirror. The same tired eyes as always, the same wrinkles that told stories of giving love without getting it back. But there was something else in my gaze, a hardness I didn't recognize, a determination that had been buried under years of compliance. I went to the kitchen and made coffee, as I had every morning for 40 years. But this time, I didn't think about calling Max to ask how he had slept. I didn't check my phone in anticipation of a message from him apologizing for the previous day's humiliation. For the first time in a long time, I was my own first concern of the day. I sat at the table where I had so often planned surprises for them, counted bills for their expenses, and cried silently when they treated me with indifference. Now, this table would be a witness to something completely different. I took out my checkbook, my bank statements, and started to do the math. I wanted to see in exact numbers the extent of my own foolishness. Monthly rent, $500, multiplied by 36 months, was $18,000. Food and supplies, approximately $200 a month, was another $7,200. Birthday gifts, Christmas gifts, anniversary gifts, at least $3,000. Lena's medical emergencies, $800. The car loan they never paid me back, $2,500. The air conditioner repair in their apartment, $600. The living room furniture, $1,200. $33,400. That was the exact sum of my generosity. $33,400 I had wasted from my husband's inheritance, from my pension, from the savings I had put aside penny by penny for decades of honest work. All that money thrown out the window to keep two adults comfortable who couldn't even pretend to respect me. The phone rang, and I saw Max's name on the screen. Normally, my heart would have pounded as I ran to answer, hoping he would finally apologize and explain that everything had been a misunderstanding. But this time, I let it ring once, twice, 3 times. Finally, it fell silent, and I continued drinking my coffee as if nothing had happened. 10 minutes later, it rang again. This time, it was Lena. I let it ring too. Then a text came from Max. "Mom, please answer. We need to talk." I deleted the message without replying. At 2 in the afternoon, I decided to go for a walk. I hadn't done that in months without a specific purpose, without an errand related to them. It was always the bank for transfers, the supermarket to buy them something they needed, the pharmacy for Lena's medications. Today, I went for a walk just because I wanted to. I walked past the park where I had often taken Max as a child. I remembered that sweet boy who hugged me tight and said I was the best mom in the world. When had he become this man who treated me like an ATM with feelings? When did I start confusing love with money? When did I start to believe I had to buy my own son's affection? At the bank, where I had so often made automatic transfers, I stopped in front of the door. The branch manager, Mr. Klein, saw me through the glass and waved. I had known him for years. He had processed every one of my transfers to Max and Lena. He had watched my account drain month after month to fill theirs. I went inside and walked directly to his office. "Mr. Klein," I told him, "I need to cancel the automatic transfers I have programmed." He looked at me surprised. For 3 years, these transfers had been as regular as the sunrise. "Are you sure, Mrs. Richter? Did something happen?" His concern was genuine, more genuine than any interest Max had shown in me in recent months. "What happened is that I finally opened my eyes," I replied. "I want to cancel everything, and I also want information on how to protect my accounts. I don't want anyone else to have access to my money." While Mr. Klein processed the cancellations, my phone didn't stop ringing. Max, Lena, Max again. It was as if they had developed radar to detect when their source of income was in danger. I turned the phone off completely. "Mrs. Richter," Mr. Klein said as he handed me the papers, I apologize for intruding, but in all these years, I have seen you be very generous with your family. I hope you are not being pressured to make these changes." His words touched me deeply. This man, who barely knew me beyond bank transactions, showed more genuine concern for my well-being than my own son. "I'm not being pressured, Mr. Klein," I replied. "On the contrary, I have finally stopped pressuring myself." When I left the bank, I felt strangely light, as if I had left an enormous burden in that office. For the first time in years, my money was entirely mine. I had no financial obligations to people who saw me as a resource instead of a person. I went home and thought about all the things I hadn't done to please Max and Lena. The trips I hadn't taken to save money for them, the friends I no longer saw because I was always available for their emergencies, the hobbies I had given up because every dollar I spent tried to make me feel guilty. But after 6 months, my daughter called to genuinely apologize. Now we have a real relationship based on love, not on money. Her words gave me hope and confirmed that I had made the right decision. Do you think Max and Lena will understand one day? Maybe yes, maybe no, she answered honestly. But that's no longer your responsibility, Mrs. Richter. Your responsibility now is to live your own life. That night, for the first time in 3 years, I went to bed without worrying about whether Max and Lena had money for rent, for food, for their whims. I went to bed thinking about myself, my plans, my future, and I slept better than I had in years. The next day, Ethan and Mr. Summer came at 8 in the morning to change the locks and install the security system. While they worked, my phone didn't stop ringing from unknown numbers. Lena was still trying to contact me from different phones, but I had developed a new skill, completely ignoring calls that didn't suit me. "Mrs. Richter," Ethan said as he installed the cameras, "this system will give you absolute peace of mind. You can see from your phone who is coming to your house even when you're not here, and if someone breaks in without permission, an alert is automatically sent to the police." The irony was not lost on me. I was installing a security system to protect myself from my own son, but it didn't hurt as much as it used to. It was simply a practical measure to maintain my newfound peace. While they were working, I decided to do something I hadn't done in years: call my sister Diana in Chicago. We had lost touch because every time we talked, I would tell her about Max and Lena's successes, about how much money I had spent on them, about how proud I was to be able to help them. I now realized that our conversations had become financial reports disguised as family news. "Renata," Diana answered, surprised. "Sister, how are you? We haven't spoken in months." "I'm good, Diana. Better than good. I'm calling you to tell you that I've finally come to my senses." I told her the whole story, from the beginning, the secret wedding, the humiliation, the visit with the lawyer, my decision to cut off the funding. Diana listened to me in silence, and when I was done, her answer surprised me. "Renata, sister, it was about time. Every time we spoke, it broke my heart to hear you brag about how much money you gave them, as if love could be measured in dollars. I wanted to tell you something, but I didn't know how. What did you want to tell me? That Max never spoke lovingly about you when I saw him at family gatherings. It was always, 'My mom helped me with this,' or 'My mom bought me that,' but never, 'I miss my mom,' or 'I love my mom.' It was as if you were a service provider, not a person." Her words hurt, but it was unnecessary pain, like when a doctor cleans an infected wound. It hurts, but it's part of the healing. "You know what else I noticed?" Diana continued. "Lena always spoke about you in the future tense. When Renata is no longer here, we can remodel her house, or when we inherit, we will invest in the business. As if they were waiting for you to die to really live." This revelation hit me like a bucket of ice water. They didn't just see me as an ATM. They saw me as a temporary obstacle between them and their money. While I was trying to make them happy, they were planning their future without me. After talking with Diana, I sat in my kitchen processing all this information. Years of marriage to a man who truly loved me, 35 years of raising my son alone after my husband's death, and 3 years of financing two adults who saw me as a $100,000 obstacle. The doorbell rang, and on the new cameras, I saw it was Eleanor with a mug in her hands. I opened the door and she handed me a fresh brewed coffee. "I thought you might need some company after everything you told me yesterday," she said, with that sincere smile I had already come to appreciate. We sat in my living room and Eleanor told me more details from her own experience. "My daughter said the exact same thing to me that Lena says to you. You're like a second mom to me. We're special to you. Everything will be ours one day anyway." Those are rehearsed phrases, Mrs. Richter. They learn them from the Emotional Manipulation Handbook. Chapter 1 is Make Her Feel Indispensable. Chapter 2, Create Constant Financial Emergencies. Chapter 3 is When She Resists, Question Her Mental Health. We laughed, but it was a bitter laugh. It was both funny and tragic to recognize such predictable patterns in our own children's behavior. "Did you ever feel guilty for cutting off the money?" I asked Eleanor. "Every single day for the first 3 months," she answered honestly. "But then I started to see the results. My daughter had to get a second job. Her husband stopped playing golf every weekend and started looking for extra work. They learned to live within their means. And more importantly, they learned that I was a person, not a resource." That afternoon, I decided to do something I had postponed for years: visit my husband's grave. I always made excuses not to go because Max or Lena needed something urgent, or because the taxi fare was better invested in one of their emergencies. The cemetery was quiet and beautiful. Robert's grave looked a bit neglected because I hadn't been there to clean it in months. I sat on the grass next to his headstone and talked to him as if he were alive. "Robert, my love, I think I lost myself for a while. After you left, I put all my energy into Max. I wanted to be the best mother in the world, thinking somehow he would grow up without a father. But I think in the process, I forgot to be myself." The wind blew gently, and for a moment, I felt like he was listening to me. Our son has become someone I don't recognize. Or maybe he was always like this, and I didn't want to see it. His wife is, well, you know how she is. The money you left for me to live peacefully, I spent it taking care of them. But not anymore, my love. I have learned. I cleaned his grave, replaced the withered flowers with new ones, and stayed there for another hour, simply enjoying the peace. For the first time in years, I was not in a hurry to get home to solve a crisis for Max and Lena. When I got home, there were 3 cars parked in front of my door again. My heart raced, but this time I was prepared. The cameras showed me that it was Max, Lena, and 2 other people I didn't recognize. Everyone seemed agitated, talking to each other and pointing at my house. I didn't get out of the car. Instead, I called Mr. Weber, my lawyer. "Mr. Weber, they are at my house again. This time they've brought more people. What should I do?" "Don't get out of the car, Mrs. Richter. I'll be there right away, and I'll call the police." After our conversation yesterday, I requested a temporary restraining order. They are not allowed to be on your property. Minutes later, Mr. Weber and 2 police patrol cars arrived. I watched the officers talk to Max and Lena, saw my son gesticulate angrily, saw Lena crying again, but this time her tears did not move me. One of the officers approached my car. "Ma'am, you can get out safely. Your visitors are going to leave immediately." As I got out of the car, Max shouted at me from the street. "Mom, this is ridiculous. We're your family. You can't call the police on your own son." "Max," I replied with a calm that surprised even me, "family doesn't threaten lawsuits for mental incompetence. Family doesn't break into people's homes without permission. Family doesn't treat their mothers like ATM." Lena screamed from across the street. "You're going to pay us everything you owe us. We have bills you co-signed for. You can't just abandon us like this." Mr. Weber interjected. "Mrs. Brooks, any future communication must be through my office, and I suggest you consult with an attorney before making collection threats because my client has full documentation of all the payments she voluntarily made for 3 years." I watched them drive away in their cars, defeated, but not giving up. I knew this wasn't over, but for the first time in this situation, I felt confident. I had professional help, I had emotional support from Eleanor, and more importantly,
I had mental clarity about what was right and what was wrong. That night, Eleanor invited me to her house for dinner. I met her daughter who was visiting, and I was able to see with my own eyes what a healthy family relationship looked like. They spoke respectfully to each other, asked sincerely about each other's lives, and laughed together. The daughter didn't ask for money once the entire evening. I wanted that with Max too, I confessed to Eleanor after her daughter had left. And maybe you'll get it one day, she replied. But first, he has to learn that you are a person, not just a resource. For the first time in weeks, I went to bed feeling hopeful about the future. The next few days were strangely peaceful. The surveillance cameras showed me that Max and Lena were driving past my house several times a day. Sometimes slowly, sometimes they parked for a few minutes, but without getting out. It was as if they were studying my routine, looking for the perfect moment for their next move. Mr. Weber had advised me to document every one of these visits, so I kept a detailed log with the date and time. Their persistence will work in our favor, he had said. Every time they show up after we've told them not to approach, it strengthens our case for a permanent restraining order. On Friday morning, I was calmly having breakfast when the doorbell rang. The camera showed me a very well-dressed young woman with a folder in her hands and a professional smile. I didn't recognize her, but something about her posture told me it was not a social visit. "Good morning, Mrs. Renata Richter," she said as I opened the door. "I am a social investigator from the Office of Senior Services. We have received a report that you may be in an at-risk situation, and we need to conduct a wellness check." My blood ran cold. Max and Lena had escalated the situation. It was no longer just threats from private lawyers. Now they had involved the government.
The thought terrified me. They could take control of my money? They could try, but we have solid evidence that you are completely competent and that they are motivated by greed and not by genuine concern. That afternoon, I called Diana to vent. "Sister," she said after hearing my story, "do you notice how far they are willing to go for money? They are risking family relationships, spending money on lawyers and doctors, destroying their own reputation, all to get access to your bank account again." Her words made me think. Max and Lena had completely revealed their true nature. There was no going back. There was no possibility of a genuine reconciliation. To them, I had never been a mother or a respected mother-in-law. I had always just been money on legs. This revelation, although painful, was also liberating. I no longer had to wonder if I was making the right decision. I no longer had to feel guilty for protecting myself. They had proven for themselves that my emotional and physical well-being was less important to them than my money. That evening, Eleanor came to visit with a surprise. She had invited her friends from the garden club to meet me. "Renee," she introduced me, "these are my friends Cynthia, who you already know from the salon, Maria, Carmen, and Elfrida. We have all been through similar situations with abusive family members." We spent the evening sharing stories. Maria had had to set boundaries with a brother who constantly asked her for money. Carmen had cut off her relationship with a daughter who only visited when she needed money. Elfrida had had to change her will after she found out her grandchildren considered her their retirement plan. What hurts me the most, I confessed, is not losing the money I gave them, but realizing that I never had the love I thought I had. "Renee," Elfrida said with the wisdom of her 80 years, "true love cannot be bought or sold. If you had to pay for it, it was never real." Her words were balm for my wounded soul. She was right. I had bought attention, not love. I had financed an illusion. "You know what I've discovered," I said to my new friends, "that loneliness surrounded by people who don't love you is worse than being lonely on your own. At least now, when I am alone, I am in good company." Everyone laughed, and we toasted to our newfound wisdom. That night, after my new friends had left, I sat in my garden thinking. The stars shone brighter than ever, or perhaps I was seeing them with clearer eyes. For the first time in my adult life, I was completely alone financially. I had no dependents, no financial obligations to anyone but myself. And instead of scaring me,
This reality excited me. I could travel when I wanted, I could remodel my house, I could buy myself nice clothes, I could donate to charities that were important to me. I could invest in my own future instead of financing the present of ungrateful people. Freedom tasted like hope, and for the first time in years, I wanted to plan my future. A month after the psychiatrist's visit, I thought I had finally won the war. I had settled into a beautiful routine. I calmly had breakfast and read the newspaper. I tended to my garden, had lunch with Eleanor or one of my new friends. And in the afternoons, I devoted myself to activities I had given up for years. I had started painting again, something I was passionate about before I became Max and Lena's personal financier. But on a Thursday morning, while I was painting flowers on my new easel, Mr. Weber came to my house with a grim expression that made my blood run cold. "Renee, we need to talk. Max and Lena have filed a formal lawsuit for mental incompetence in family court. They are requesting to have a legal guardian assigned to you." The words fell on me like stones. I knew it was a possibility, but hearing it out loud made it terrifyingly real. Does that mean they can take control of my money? If a judge determines that you are unable to manage your affairs, yes, he could place Max as your legal guardian, which would give him full control over your finances. I sat down heavily on my sofa, feeling the weight of the deepest betrayal I had experienced in my life. My own son was trying to legally declare me incompetent to steal my money. Mr. Weber, what evidence could they have? You yourself have seen that I am completely competent. They have statements from 3 witnesses who claim you have behaved erratically. They also submitted unpaid doctor's bills that you supposedly didn't pay and medications that you supposedly hoarded without taking them. But that's a lie. I don't have any outstanding doctor's bills or hoarded medications. I know, Renee, but they have fabricated convincing evidence. They also have the statement from Dr. Lehman, who states that you refused to cooperate with a psychiatric evaluation, which they interpret as proof of mental decline. The manipulation was diabolical. They had turned my refusal to undergo an unnecessary exam into proof of a mental illness. They had used my instinct to protect myself from them as proof that she needed protection. Who are the 3 witnesses? Mr. Weber looked through his documents. Lena, of course, a neighbor named Mr. Davis, and someone who claims to be your pharmacist, Mr. Green. Mr. Davis was the neighbor across the street, an unpleasant man who had always had problems with me because my friends sometimes parked in front of his house. Mr. Green was indeed my pharmacist, but I didn't understand what he could have against me. "I need to talk to Mr. Weber," I told Mr. Weber. "Something's not right." We went to the pharmacy together that afternoon. Mr. Green received me, surprised and nervous. "Mrs. Richter, it's good to see you. How are you?" "Mr. Green, I was told you signed a statement saying I show erratic behavior with my medications." His face turned red as a tomato. "Mrs. Richter, your daughter-in-law came in a few weeks ago and asked about your medications. She said she was worried because you were acting strangely." "And what did you tell her?" "I explained to her that you only buy vitamins and occasional aspirin, that you don't have any regular medical prescriptions, but she insisted that this was proof that you weren't taking adequate care of yourself." Mr. Weber interjected, "Mr. Green, did you sign a paper?" She brought a document that said I was confirming that Mrs. Richter had irregular medication purchases. I thought it was for her health insurance or something. I didn't know it was for a lawsuit. My own pharmacist had been tricked into signing something he didn't fully understand. Lena's manipulation knew no bounds. "Mr. Green," I said, "I need you to write a statement explaining exactly what happened and clarifying that I have no problems with medications." "Of course, Mrs. Richter. I am terribly sorry for this misunderstanding." After the pharmacy, we went to confront Mr. Davis. When we knocked on his door, he received us with obvious hostility. "What do you want, Mr. Davis?" Mr. Weber said. "I understand you signed a statement about my client's behavior." "And you're right, I did. That woman is crazy. She's been acting strange for weeks. Can you be more specific about the behaviors you observed?" installing cameras as if she lived in a war zone, having strangers visit all the time, yelling at her family in the street. I realized Mr. Davis had taken everything out of context. The cameras had been installed for protection. The strangers were my new friends. The yelling was me defending my house from Max and Lena's invasions. "Mr. Davis," I said, "do you know why I installed the cameras?" "No, and I don't care." "To protect myself from my son and daughter-in-law who broke into my house without permission and threatened me." "That's what a crazy person would say," he replied cruelly. There was no way to reason with him. His statement was based on superficial observations maliciously interpreted. That evening, Mr. Weber and I sat down to plan our defense. "Renee, we need our own psychiatric evaluation. I have a colleague, Dr. Moore, who is an expert in assessing mental capacity. She can officially confirm that you are completely competent. What if Max and Lena have bribed the judge? What if none of this matters because they have already decided to declare me incompetent? Renee, the legal system is not perfect, but it's not completely corrupt either. We have solid evidence of your mental competence and their financial motivations. We are going to fight this." The next day, I went to my appointment with Dr. Moore. She was a woman in her 50s with kind but astute eyes. "Mrs. Richter, I'm going to ask you a series of questions and tests to assess your mental capacity. Take your time and answer honestly." For 2 hours, she asked me questions about my memory, my reasoning ability, my financial understanding, my emotional health. She also gave me cognitive tests and asked me to solve mathematical and logical problems. "Mrs. Richter," she said at the end, "your results are well above average for your age. You are not only mentally competent, but your cognitive function is excellent." "Doctor, why do you think my family is doing this?" "Based on what you've told me and the documents I've reviewed, this seems to be a classic case of elder financial exploitation. Unfortunately, it's more common than people think." I left the consultation feeling validated, but also sad. The professional confirmation of my mental health was a relief, but it also confirmed that the lawsuit was real and necessary. That afternoon, Eleanor organized an emergency meeting with all our friends from the garden club. When I told them about the incompetence lawsuit, everyone was outraged. "Renee," Maria said, "we will testify in your favor. We have been with you for weeks, and anyone can see that you are doing great." "Better than great," Cynthia added. "You are clearer and stronger than many 40-year-old women I know." Elfrida, with her 80-year-old wisdom, took my hands. "Renee, my dear, what your children are doing is nothing